Morning all. I'm going to be starting in a few moments. See who may want to join. Alright, I think I shared it with a few people, and I'm going to just grab my gloves. Which I had thought were in my jacket, but we're not. And then we'll get started. I think the plan today is to do some stance review. And I think I got slightly ahead of myself with cross stance yesterday, I'm pretty sure. I thought it was my third in a series, but I think it was my fourth now. And so welcome, cheers. Put a little heat into my system. I'm about 16 feet from the camera. Winds are, I think they're kind of consistent, but not very high. But I guess it's knocked 10 or 15 degrees off the, the wind chill. So I think it says it feels it's low 20s or almost mid 20s, but it's, I think, actually about 35 or something. But I got my open-toed shoes on, so we're going to see how we go. So we'll start with a little warm-up, and I think our review is 3 stances. So I guess that's 7-star, assisting stance, and boxer stance. I think those are the 3. And then we did cross stance yesterday, so I guess after we teach 2 new stances, then we'll do cross as a review with 2 others. So, yeah, there's the wind. So I'm going to just be shifting leg to leg here, and then I'm going to practice shifting, and as my leg takes the weight, I'm going to lift the heel slightly without kind of leaning my body or overly challenging my weighted knee. So I'm really careful about where I'm placing that knee. And now I'm just adding to my focus here so that my weight's here, my heel's up, and I'm going to shift here and have the heel come up, but I'm actually going to drive this heel down, not fast, but just sort of pneumatically. So drive that down, drive this down. So a little bit more active on the side that I'm leaving than simply having the activity on the side they arrive at. You're welcome to send your flu medicine donations to, that crazy guy standing outside in the winter every day to teach a free session. Or fresh citrus, Chinese herbs, whatever you got. But I have to say, all in all, it feels kind of moderate. It hasn't been too bone chilling. It hasn't been too wind-blown, certainly not too precipitous. I haven't been out here in the freezing drizzle or sideways rain or anything like that. So, all things considered, it's been pretty nice. I think my plan today is to see if I can't reverse this video, increase the volume, and then post it, as the archive seems to do this kind of mirroring thing. So I'm wondering if that's confusing when people rewatch it and I say left and I'm clearly pointing to my right on your screen. Not really sure. but at least it's my intention to reverse it or flip it or whatever on that vertical central axis. Good. Now I'm going to shift onto the heel on my weight, so my weighted leg will be on the heel. I could keep the ball of the foot down and just lift the toes if you like. Maybe that's a good way to start it. And my other foot's flat. So I'm bearing the weight, seeing if I can energize those quads as I take the weight and lift the toes. If you have some good balance, see if you can't shift and float the ball of the foot and continue to lift the toes up so the weight's on the heel. Obviously this is going to require an awful lot of work or just the least amount of extra work, which is what I'm going to recommend. And what I mean here is that I'm not shifting my weight and leaning or shooting my butt out or tipping backwards. I'm stable over that leg, and that's more work with the ball of the foot up. But if I had been over here, when I pick the ball of the foot up, I'm going to have to use my arms and use my abs and pull on my back and so forth to try not to fall over. Good. So I don't know how well you can see what I'm doing on this one because I'm just barely floating the ball of the foot up in the air off the ground. But I'm really engaging my lower legs quite a bit. And now I'm going to try pushing down more actively on the leg I'm leaving so that I have coming into action on the the newly weight-bearing leg and expressing my action on the leg that I've left with weight. So I'm working both up on this side, toes back, pressing down here, kind of pneumatically, so it's not like keeping the beat as a drummer where it's all kind of fast, but I'm kind of pressing as if I'm squeezing the liquid out of a system so it takes its time to go out, so it's a smooth pressure. I can even feel it as some resistance or incompressibility as I do that. So it's a fairly subtle exercise to see the differences between the different ones I've done, but you're going to be feeling it in the legs. So I'll make a note here. Welcome, by the way, glad you're joining us. If you're joining us, I'm going to make a note here about what we're doing like I've been doing. If I can hopefully find my note from last time. Hey, I found it, good. A bit less typing that way. Gonna repeat my old note and revise it. Alright, so I made a note there. I'm going to be on a bit of a time sensitive session today as I have to get to my regular paid class, and they're going to be on Zoom, and if I'm there's my reminder for it, and if I'm not there on time, I imagine they're just staring at the screen wondering if I'm about to log in or not. Alright, good. So that's my little footprint warm-up. varying the footprint as we shift the weight. Alright, so I'm going to just take my 7-star stance, and that 7-star stance has that kind of active, empty foot, right? And we're trying to get that calf stretch, you know, point the toes upward, keeping the weight here. I'm doing it quite fully open, kind of 90-degree practice. And this is the one where, you know, you'll see people drop this hamstring to that calf, drop this hamstring to the floor, and, you know, take a cool posture, of course. But here's our 7-star stance, and actually the view you have is just about to where the Big Dipper rises this time of year, just over the birch tree, maybe like slightly north of the birch to the left. But I guess if we were filming this right here at night, you might catch a glimpse of the Big Dipper right in this view. So I'm going to do a little variation of it here. I guess not a variation, but just sort of a practice of it. So I'm going to sit in my stance maybe 30 seconds, something like that, just a guess. And then at the end of that, I'm going to try and go a little bit deeper into the stance, maybe just a ½ inch deeper, 3 inches deeper, whatever is going to work for you. And in order to do that, I'm going to let my heel slide forward. If I don't let my heel slide forward on the empty leg, that leg will tend to bend, or because this is a fixed length, the knee doesn't bend, the heel doesn't move, as I go down, I may notice that my butt wants to go out, which of course is not good. So I'm going to practice going down and just feeling that heel adjust to help kind of teach myself that, you know, the height of the stance is partly going to determine where that heel lands in terms of distance from your foundation foot, as opposed to just saying, well, let me go lower, I'm lower, or let me go lower, I'm lower, or let me go lower that way. So we've come into a little bit of a lower stance, maybe 30 seconds, something like that. And then I'm going to come into that half open, half closed version. So I've just kind of cut this over about 40 degrees or so, and I'm in the same low. If you have another 30 seconds in you, you could do this 5-second increments, 10-second, but I just picked the number. And when you're ready, then come up, and that means the heel moves. So I'm still down in my stance, but relatively speaking, I've come up from the lowest stance I have today. So I'm doing the stance, coming down, staying down, and changing the I guess the aperture of the stance. Maybe that's the right term, right? So how wide my empty leg is in relation to my fixed and weighted leg, and then I'm coming up. So open, down, down further, closed, still just as far down, and then closed and up, and then you're done. We could have started this down, up, over and up, and then over and down. That'd be fine too. Good. So we'll try this. I think I'll do this facing you maybe this time, with, you know, empty leg facing. And we played with a number of different versions. Most often you're going to see people facing the empty leg in a 7-star stance, rather than facing the direction of the weighted foot. But you certainly may see people open to the open aperture of the stance. I need to look up aperture, see if I'm using that. I think of it as the gate of the stance, like how open it is. But you could certainly be here tracking that knee and femur, of course, or somewhere on your way to that foundation leg. So that's probably 30. That means I'm going to sink, and that means my heel's going to slip forward a bit. That's a nice practice when you have socks on or ice, because it'll just slip. You don't have to really move it using the leg muscles themselves, and you don't kind of jerk and kind of adjust that way. You just kind of lower yourself and it kind of wants to slip or slide. Enjoying the clouds today, for sure. And then staying just as low here, that's just my choice. Coming over to a less fully open stance. Oops, I was just checking to see if there was any questions, and I think I closed it out. But what are you going to do? Yeah, I lost it. But anyway, welcome whoever might have joined us. Yeah, I don't see comments, but I'm glad you joined in. And then coming up into the stance. I brought the beaver stick out, but you know, as we've said when we taught these, you can certainly practice these on your own. So I'll transition into the boxer stance. This is the one I have a lot of trouble keeping my hands in my pockets. I found every time learning the boxer stance, the moment your hands are wrong, you get hit. So there's probably this fear-based practice of the hands being up, having the coach wallop you. So the way I was teaching it is that the feet open, step, toe in, shift to the balls of the feet so the heels float, much like we did in our warm-up exercise. Good. In this stance, I can generally, what you'll do is you'll have somebody facing this square, you know, at their most open, you know, throwing the right, for example. But more often you're going to be facing the open gate of the stance, the open aperture, and shifting the weight in the stance. Most of the practice you'll see is shifting the weight from the rear to the front. So we're driving from that rear weighted, maybe 40% on the rear, and then that drives the rest of the way for your shot, whatever that shot happens to be. So a nice practice in this, again on the balls of the feet, is to shift back and forth. So spend some time here, spend some time here. Obviously that would be great. A boxer won't usually practice their stance static the way we are, you know, so they have stance time, but a lot of it is transitioning, stepping, advancing, retreating, and certainly punching and covering, bobbing and weaving and so forth. I told you to send the cough medicine. So what I want to do here, slight challenge is shift from one to the, you know, front to back, let's say, or back to front, and then ratchet down a tiny bit, and then come back to the front, ratchet down, come back, ratchet down, come back, so that you're working your way into a lower stance. There go the hands. So here, down, here, down, here, down, here, down. And each time I'm going down, I'm really just thinking about an inch or half an inch or something. And you may be surprised to find how quickly you're about as low as you'd like to go today. So I'm forward, I'm back, down, forward, full breath in each position, down, back, full breath in that position when you get there, down, keeping the heels off the ground, forward, down. If you have it in you, certainly feel free to take a break. Back. You may find that you can go down further on the front than the back, or vice versa. In other words, the reason you stop might be just to do with one of the legs and the other has more in it. That's okay. A little bit more advanced way to do this, besides, you know, practicing bobbing and plunging, is to ratchet your way back out, as opposed to just, okay, I'm done. So you could certainly ratchet down, ratchet out. You could certainly spend more time in each of those. I just did one breath. So we'll try that stance again. This time I'm not going to measure it. I'm going to just step into it. And if you want, you can back measure and see how you did with that back measure. So kind of reverse the procedure and see how you did. Good, so there's my boxer stance. As I have coffee today, watching my coffee get cold. Hey Robert Wallace, your screen avatar always makes me feel warmer when I'm out here, so thanks. I'm not sure if it's a yak or what, but it certainly looks like something that can handle the exposed cold climbs. And that's climbs IMES and IMBS both. So here I am in the boxer stance. I guess I'll do another version because I kind of showed that. Another is just to kind of bounce in it so that I feel the heels dip a little but never touch the ground. So the heels drop and then the butt drops further, butt comes up, heels come up. So it's sort of like a two-part bounce. So the heels drop and then the knees can bend a bit more and then I come back up. Kind of like you need to go to the restroom. But I'm not doing this to stretch. I'm just doing this to work the muscle groups and challenge the balance. If you lose control of this, you're going to drop a heel or perhaps need to step or lean. So maybe pick a number like 108 and drop and rise 108 times. And probably you can see that the amount of motion that I have here is just very small. My total movement, I think in my heels is, I don't know, ½ inch, maybe an inch or two in my hips. But that'll be a nice one to feel. I'm guessing on your calves, maybe in the front of the quads, you'll feel it too. People may feel it in their feet. But just another variation, something else to do in the stance, which is a little bit less static than standing still, but not quite moving around, stepping and cross-stepping and jabbing. Good. Then we did the assistant stance, so I'm going to come into that position. I think we did 3 versions of it, so I'm going to start with the one that we most often do in our system. So that's the ball of the foot beside the arch, weight on one leg, knee bent. And I should be aware of the time here so I do not overshoot my session. Transition. I don't think I talked in the assisting stance too much about where you'd be facing. I think I always learned it with the threat to the empty side, which I think is how most empty stances will consider the threat to be in the empty foot side. So if you were the threat, I wouldn't be in the empty stance this way. I might be in an empty stance this way, whatever that empty stance is, if it's, you know, cat or assistant or 7-star, or I'm not sure, whatever, I can't remember what else we did that was an empty stance. So I'll often practice, if I'm doing assisting stance, you know, turning the trunk a bit in this direction. And if I don't turn the trunk, kind of keep my body bladed, turning the head, turning the attention. Of course, I usually practice it with the arms protecting. I think I showed you kind of one version of that, you know, where we're protecting the side, coming in quite low in the stance, right? And, you know, protecting the lower leg and protecting the side and the ribs. Although I think we did that in the nailing stance, that version. So I'll change to the slightly forward position now. So the big toe, touching the big toe, and the empty toe just slightly less far forward than the weighted big toe. Again, by maybe half a toe length, not so all but standing on the same line with my toes. Although I have to say, I have a pet peeve about martial arts instructors saying, notice in this stance your heels are on one line. Notice that when we step to this stance, your toes of each foot are in a line, or the arches of your feet line up only when we're in the stance. And I'm always thinking, well, you're describing 2 points. You know, these toes and those toes, this arch, that arch, this bubbling well, that bubbling well, this heel, that heel. Well, if it's only 2 points, it's always a line. So, or they'll say, turn here to face an angle. And I'm thinking, you do know that 180 degrees is an angle, so is 90, right? 0. Of course, I know what they mean, but it's always a bit of a pet peeve for me when they say, you know, and now address the angle. Well, you were addressing an angle. You were squared to the room. You were facing the opponent. You were facing the camera. That's an angle too. So at any rate, I understand that wherever I put my toes, they're in a line. But in this case, my empty foot toe is just shy of the reach that my weighted big toe has reached. And they still touch. A lot of times with this one, people will kind of roll in because they have that just sort of that one point of awareness of the toes, or they might even kind of be a little rolled out. So my left heel is closer to my midline than my toes. And so I'd rather just check in on that when you have those limited points of reference. You know, have you kind of rolled a leg in or out. It might not matter too much from the point of view of the stance training, like, you know, the endurance and fitness and stuff. You know, like, I'm still going to get the workout here, but it does seem to me that the extent to which you can consistently devote your consciousness to the act of practice, that's going to really let that practice fruit much more reliably, probably much sooner. And so now I'll do the nailing version, where I'm back to the arch of the foot, and I have this, instead of straight line, I'll say kind of vertical line of the sole of the foot, or the heel to the toe. And I don't know how well I'm achieving that. Well, yeah, not too bad. So bent down. And the higher you stand in here, the more plantar flexion you'll be practicing. The lower, the more dorsal flexion or neutrality you'll experience in that ankle. And this one's usually taught with the thighs squeezing a bit, sort of really emphasizing the lack of space between the legs. And again, I don't think I used this yet today, but if you want that external support on something like this, feel free. See if I can add a quote for us. Hi, John. Hi, John. John, you're my favorite John. I just want you to know that. All right, let's see. I typed it out before I spoke it, so I guess I'll just read it, and that'll keep this a quote rather than a paraphrase. You know what, I shifted, I think while I typed I didn't keep the nailing version, so I'll just transition to it here since I basically started it over. And I'll read you the quote. It's about the mind, the breath, and the body. Collect the mind. Invite the breath inside with that mind. Observe the breath's kneading with body, suffusing with body. Invite the breath outside with that mind. Disperse, dissolve the mind. Good, I think I'm getting to the end of the time that I might have. So I'm going to go back to that leg loosening, Italian cool down that we've done a few times. And I think in about a half hour I'll be here teaching live on Zoom, live in person. That's a free class to Patreon members, free class to the public if they want to show up and stand outdoors here with me. It's just a half hour every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. And it's a small fee to get onto the Zoom feed if you're not otherwise a Patreon member, enjoying it for free as a bonus. Okay. Shake it out. So we talked about shaking from the hip, shaking the knee, shaking the ankle, slight variations. And again, I'm sorry you didn't get to see me fall in the ice. I know that would have been way more worth it. But thank you for joining in. And that's it for me.